What are the global cycles and the catalysts that are leading us into a decentralized world? Now, what the heck does that even mean, first of all, a decentralized world? Well, if you've been paying attention to my videos for the last year and a half, you know I've been talking about a pendulum that swings back and forth from globalization or centralization to deglobalization or decentralization. I've been talking about this thesis for about a year and a half, and here we are witnessing it happening in real time. But what a lot of you maybe haven't realized is there's a few key catalysts that we're witnessing right now that show this is happening at a faster rate than I might have even imagined. And I'm going to break all of that down for you in this video so you can understand exactly what's happening and, most importantly, what comes next. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos to change the way you think about money because almost everything you've been taught is wrong. I know I say it all the time, but it's true. That's why. Now, today, I want to talk about something that has been an ongoing theme if you've been watching my channel for any period of time. For the last year and a half, I've been talking about my 3 revolutionary cycles thesis. Now, we've been watching this play out in real time. A lot of people want to know, like, Mark, when is it going to happen? And the point is, it's happening. We're literally witnessing it right now. Sort of like if I just painted a wall and we're watching it dry and you're like, when is it going to dry? And I'm like, it's drying right now. It just takes a while. And maybe you don't notice it when you're in that close, but I'm going to take the time to show you some of the biggest key pieces, the global catalysts that show us that we are moving into a decentralized world. So as I've been making the case, the world swings back and forth on a 250-year time frame, like a pendulum, moving towards centralization or globalization, and then it swings back. How do we know it's happening? Well, those are the things we're going to look at right now. So the first thing that I make the case on over and over and over is that as much as progress moves forward, and not just linearly, but exponentially. So we continue to build on technologies and lessons of the past. So we have progress moving through exponentially. Approximately 300 years ago, most of the world was dirt. We didn't have structures more than 2 stories high. We had no steel. We couldn't build skyscrapers or bridges. We had no airplanes. We had no spaceships. We had nothing. And so everything that we have in the world today has been just in the last couple hundred years. That's how fast we've had progress. Of course, I don't have to explain how much progress we've had in the last decade or so. However, as much as things progress, as much as things change, things also stay the same. And that's part of these cycles. Cycles continue to repeat over and over. That's because of humans. That's because of things. It's kind of like if we were bowling and we put bumpers up in the gutters and the ball just kind of ping pongs back and forth. And the cycles that we have look something like this. So because we're in a debt-based monetary system, that's going to change. We have debt. So we have this long-term debt cycle. And what happens is we start without any debt and things are fast and free and things move fast and we have explosive growth. But because of the debt cycle, debt begins to weigh the system down. And eventually that debt becomes unsustainable. It holds back progress and then things can't move forward. The amount of debt causes boom and bust cycles. And that's where we're at right now today at the end of an 80-year long-term debt cycle. What happens at the end of a long-term debt cycle? Well, you might already know the answer if you're paying attention because we're going through it right now. We have crises. We have an energy crisis. We start running out of real things. So money is not wealth. Money buys us things. Money measures real things. What are real things? Goods and services, but goods and services need energy. Energy sits at the base of that, so we start having energy crisis, a crisis of real things. Then we have a food crisis. So energy and food, the 2 most important things for us to live as humans. Of course, in the CPI basket, the Consumer Price Index, the government has what they call the core CPI. The core CPI, they remove 2 things. You guessed it, energy and food, the 2 most important things. But we have too much debt, which then leads to distortions in the market. We have crisis of real things because the government can't print more of energy or food. We have an energy crisis. We have a food crisis. When that happens, again, over and over throughout history, what comes next? You guessed it, war. I'm talking about a war on the pandemic. We've been in that war for the last 2 years, and now we have an actual real shooting war. Of course, Europe is on the brink, Russia, Ukraine, who knows, potentially a World War III. Is China getting involved? Who knows what's going on with Taiwan? And it all happens because of the debt cycle. All right, that's the cycle that we're talking about. Now, if we look at this over a long period of time, we can see, as I said, about every 250 years, we have this revolution, a political revolution cycle where the world rejects centralization or globalization and swings back to decentralization. You can see how this happens. Now, we have this current revolution that we're in right now, really started with Trump. He really showed this decentralization, rejecting establishment. Of course, we saw that with Brexit, breaking apart from the EU, and this period is moving through for the next decade or so. All right, now, if we look at a timeline here, put kind of a timeline together of ending the current world order. You've been hearing a lot, if you're a tinfoil hat wearing person, you hear about this new world order. Of course, it's not about a tinfoil hat anymore because we have President Biden saying the U.S. must lead in the new world order. He said that. We have Jacinda Ardern said the new world order. So you're hearing this a lot. So let's map this out. So we have to end the current world order to go into, of course, the new world order, which is why they talk about building back better. All right, building back better means that the old system was destroyed or torn down in order to build it back, right? So if we take a look at the timeline here, we have really Executive Order 6102. That was back in 1933, and that's when the United States government seized the gold. So what happened is the Federal Reserve, 1913, started printing paper gold certificates. Gold was money. It sat in the banks. They were printing paper gold certificates to represent a claim on the gold in the banks, but they printed too many. Surprise, surprise. And so, because they printed so many, they owed gold. They couldn't print more gold. They could only print paper, but they owed gold. And so, what'd they do? Well, your gold's in the bank, so we're just going to seize it. We'll take that gold. And then, instead of $20 an ounce that we're going to give you, we're going to revalue it to $35 an ounce. So that's when things really started to shift. Of course, 1933, it's about 80 years ago. 80-year long-term debt cycle. 1933, fast forward, 1944, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement. This is when the entire world got together and created a new global monetary order, a new world order. 1944, gold would be the reserve currency of the world. The dollar would be pegged to gold. All the currencies of the world would be pegged to gold. Fast forward, 1971, President Richard Nixon closes the gold window. Same problem that happened in 1933. The government printed too many claims, too many paper claims on gold. They printed too many. They owed gold. They couldn't print more gold. So they owed the gold, but they couldn't pay it. So what did they do this time? Well, they already seized the people's gold. They couldn't do that again. So they just said, we default. We're not going to pay you that money. Basically, they declared bankruptcy, if you will. But what it really did was it closed what we call commodity money. This is the key piece right here. So the world had been running on gold. Gold had been money for 5,000 years. That's commodity money. That's real, tangible things. So we had commodity money, but here in 1971, we ended commodity money and we went into a fake fiat counterfeit monetary system. Not a commodity system, what Zoltan Pozsar calls an inside money system. All right, fast forward, 2008, the central banks take on new inflationary policies. It was called quantitative easing. So this is when the Federal Reserve, the central bank said, hey, we're just going to give a bunch of money out to the banks to keep the markets propped up, to keep them crashing. Once they got off the gold standard on this fake system, it didn't work. The world didn't want that system, so it keeps trying to deleverage, and the central banks try to keep pumping them back up. And then finally, the day that the world order ended, right here, 2022. So in history books, when we go forward and we look backwards, these are the dates that we're going to see. 2022 was the end of what we're calling inside money, this central bank, FX reserve, SDR, paper payment system money. And we're going to a return to commodity money. So commodity money had been money for 5,000 years. We had a 50-year stint without it, and now the entire world is going back to this commodity money, but not in an orderly fashion. This is a key piece. In 1944, 1971, this was a plan. It had been mapped out, it had been planned out. Now, all of a sudden, the world is being thrust into this new system. And like I said, it's like this pendulum that swings back and forth. We ebb and flow. It's cycles that repeat. We have globalization. The whole world has been globalized, meaning the U.S. is offshored its job. Used to have a $50,000 job in the United States. We offshored it. Now it's an $8,000 job over in India. We used to make this part in America for $100. Now we make it over in Asia for $8. And so we had this globalization. We've been moving towards globalization, and now it's falling apart and we're de-globalizing. Now we're bringing stuff back to the United States, like computer chips, for example. There's 3 computer chip plants being built to manufacture chips in the United States. We've had deflation, so taking that $50,000 a year job and moving it to $8,000 in India, or the $100 part and sending it to be made for $8, that's deflationary. That brings the costs of goods and services down. But now, as the world deglobalizes, we bring production back onshore. We end these global supply chains. That's going to make things more expensive. That $8,000 job is now going to come back and cost $50,000. That $8 part will now come back and cost $100, which will be inflationary over time. Instead of these just-in-time supply chains where we get stuff just when we need it, we don't have to stockpile stuff, we don't have to take a bunch of currency, a bunch of money and stick it on the side. We've had just in time, we get stuff when we need it. Now we're going to need stuff just in case. So instead of getting it just when I need it, now I better stockpile it, I better hoard it just in case I can't get it later. And really, it's the end of centralization, and it's the beginning of decentralization. But even more importantly than that, it's really the death of trust. And this is the key piece. They're all key pieces, but this is really the key piece, the catalyst that's changing the system. So let me walk you through the death of trust. A couple key pieces right here. Venezuela gold. So if I can't trust my dollars in the bank, Canada found that out the hard way. If I can't trust my money in the system, I have to hold my own gold. But it's not very convenient if I have my gold if I have to pay somebody. So I would hold it in somebody else's vault. So Venezuela had their gold stored in vaults in the UK. But then the UK seized their gold because it was in their vaults. About $2 billion worth of gold was taken from Venezuela. All right, that's a death of trust. Well, I guess I can't trust my gold in someone else's safe. I have to hold it in my own. Afghanistan, their central bank. The central bank had their money in the FX reserve system, and the United States took it. The Biden administration said $7.5 billion in the Afghanistan central bank. We'll take it. All the people in Afghanistan that just got left behind in that war-torn nation when the U.S. just bailed out quickly, all their money was in the bank, and yeah, the U.S. just took it. $7.5 billion gone, so the Afghanistan central bank said, well, I can't trust my money there. And then we have the Canadian truckers. The people in Canada found out very quickly that their money is not safe in the bank if they donated even $25 to a legally protected peaceful protest. They changed the laws in reverse, and now they were kicked out of the financial system, had their bank accounts seized. That created a massive run on the bank. They lost trust. People in Canada said, I can't trust my money in the bank. I'm going to pull my money out. That was a big blow, a death of trust. And then finally, the death blow. We'll call it the kill shot. The kill shot was the Russian FX accounts. So we found out that there's 3 global superpowers in the world that have nuclear weapons, one of them being Russia, China, and then the US. And Russia just had their bank accounts seized. And all the nations of the world were put on notice, okay, maybe it can happen to Venezuela. They're small, they're a bad actor. Maybe it can happen to Afghanistan. They're small, they're a bad actor. Well, shoot, it can happen in Canada. Well, okay, but they're just individual people. And now we just found out that even if you're a global superpower with nuclear weapons, yes, that's right, your bank accounts can get seized as well. And so what we've just witnessed is the death of trust. Now, how does the world move forward when there's no trust? If I can't trust my money in the bank, if I can't trust my money in a vault, if I can't trust my money in the payment system, the global payment system, SWIFT, how does the world move forward? And I would say it's almost as if we need a decentralized ledger that nobody could control. It's almost like that. Anybody know where we can get one of those things? Well, let me walk you through this for a minute. So I've talked about this many times. You might have heard me before. I'm sorry if you have, but we have technological revolutions. So these are not technologies, they're technological revolutions. These are things that change the course of humanity, and they also build financial markets around them. So there's been 5. 1771, we had the Industrial Revolution, brought people from the fields and the farms into cities and factories. Changed the course of humanity. 1829, the steam engines and railways. All of humanity, people walked and had horsepower, manpower. Now we had steam engines that could move stuff across continents. Changed the course of humanity. About 50 years later, 1875, steel and electricity. We could build skyscrapers, we could build bridges, we could build airplanes, spaceships, sea cargo ships, etc., and electricity. I don't have to tell you about that. About 50 years later, we had oil, automobiles, and mass production. All of humanity, people walked and rode horses. Now we had transportation. It was pretty revolutionary. Fast forward about 50 years, we have the information age. We had the microprocessor, which brought us the computers, which brought us telecom, which brought us the internet. Changed the course of humanity. 50 years puts us right here today, 2021, and we have a new technological revolution, which of course is decentralization, decentralized technology, which is pretty interesting, seeing as the pendulum, the 250-year pendulum, is maxing out on globalization, centralization, and now swinging back to decentralization at the very time we have a technology that gives us exactly what we need. Now, it also, as I said, builds financial markets. What has dominated the financial markets for the last 50 years? That's right, telecom, computers, internet, right? FANG stocks. What dominated the markets before that? Oh yeah, GM, GE. What dominated the markets before that? Carnegie Steel, Standard Oil. And you get the point, right? And so we are moving into a new age that can give us exactly what we need. Like I said, it's almost like we need a decentralized ledger that nobody could control. And here it is 50 years later, and we know based off of history that all the next financial markets will be driven off of that. Now, if without this, how does the world move forward? We've had this global monetary system since 1944, where the world was based on a gold standard driven by the dollar. The dollar is the reserve system. The dollar is the reserve asset, but it's more than that. The dollar is really a payment network. It's the way that we move money quickly around the world. And so we've had global trade. Global trade has flourished because of we've had a global payment network. And so that's what's led to globalization. It's been very easy. However, in a world without trust, when I can't trust the global payment network because they might steal my money, how does the world move forward? It's sort of like this right here might be a scene from a movie, like a drug deal, where it's like, give me the drugs, no, give me the money first. No, you give me the drugs first, no, you give me the money first. And like, how can the world work like this? If we're going to go back to a gold standard, it's almost like, I guess I keep my gold in my safe, because if I put it in someone else's safe, Venezuela found out the hard way that the UK stole it. So I have to keep my gold in my safe, and you keep your gold in your safe, and Russia keeps theirs, and China keeps theirs, and the US keeps theirs. And then what? How do we trust each other? How do we know that we have the gold? I mean, we could use a webcam, 24/7 live stream on YouTube to show the gold pile sitting there, but China, about a year ago, we found out they were faking, and they had a bunch of fake gold. Tungsten bars, painted gold, pretending like they had it. So how can global trade work in the world without trust? How do we move forward without going backwards? Going backwards would be going back to a gold age. How do we do trade that way? Well, I guess I'm asking the question more than telling you, because it's pretty hard to see how the world can move forward without going backwards. And I know you've all been waiting for this point in this slide, but if not Bitcoin, then what? As I said before, it's almost like we need a decentralized ledger that nobody could control, something that is called trustless. Bitcoin is an open, borderless, permissionless, and trustless network. The reason why it's trustless is because it's open, it's transparent, and nobody controls it. The code is open source. Anybody can inspect the code. Anybody can verify transactions. Anybody can verify which wallets have the activity. It's trustless. We don't have to trust anybody on a closed system. I don't have to trust anybody won't seize my funds. If I send it to you, I don't have to trust that it gets to you. If I send you money on Venmo, it goes from Venmo to my credit card to my bank, to your bank, to your credit card, to your Venmo. Any one of those 5 or 6 people could stop that transaction. I pay you on a credit card. 6 months later, you could reverse that charge on me. It always requires trust. But how does the world move forward in a world without trust? And again, it requires a trustless network. And there's one of those. Now, if you have another idea of how the world can move forward in a world without trust, I'd love to hear it. Go ahead and leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't like the video, that's okay. You can give me a thumbs down, but at least leave me a comment and let me know why, how the world moves forward without going backwards in a world with no trust. That's what I got for you today, all right? To your success. I'm out.